We're not creating the high-paying jobs in our community. I work with labor. My sister works for the provincial government, and she's in a union. My nephew is a fireman in Windsor, and I'm proud of him. We have to work together. We haven't had that with business and labor working together as a community. We've kind of pushed them to go. We have to work as a team. Jobs in our community, high-paying.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
No contracting out. Still see and hear and talk to. Displaced are still at City Hall. I'm not sure that we ever saved any money. We have to take the United Way approach, where we're all government, unions, neighborhoods, everybody working together, pulling together in the same direction to make City of Windsor a better place to work and to live.
Mr. Dilkins.
Well, we have a good working relationship with our unions at City Hall. And despite the strike of 2009, I still say we have a good working relationship, which is evidenced by the fact that we're one of the very few councils, if not the only council, that was able to get CUPE to sign and agree to a collective agreement before the other one even expired in the last collective agreement. And sometimes you always need to have the conversation. You always need to have the conversation with the union and to have that good working relationship and keep the door open. And sometimes when it comes to garbage, sometimes there's no middle ground. And in that particular case, we did save the taxpayers $900,000 a year. We found efficiencies that we were then able to translate back to you by holding the line on taxes, yet providing the same level of service. But we have worked with CUPE. And I chaired the Aquatic Center Steering Committee, and we talked about lifeguards at the Aquatic Center Steering Committee. It's heavy on lifeguards there, and CUPE dealt with us. CUPE came to an agreement. We were able to modify the wage rates to make that facility competitive. And as mayor, I would continue to have an open-door policy to talk with unions, to deal with issues, and to solve the problems that exist between labor and management at all times.
Mr. Horwitz, 30 seconds.
I've spoken to Mayor Zaire in Kitchener, and he said the problem in Windsor is that we don't communicate. We don't have cooperation. We don't bring unions and business together. We make them attack each other. He put on his website in Kitchener where people that work for the city talk about how they want to serve the city. And the people that the people that live in the city talked about how they appreciate the services that are done for them. We have to bring everybody together.
Thank you very much. This question starts with Mr. Milson. Would you consider selling public assets such as utilities, facilities, or buildings?
Well, back, hate to say back in the day, but we started one of the most interesting private-public partnerships ever for the arena. That was really critical. That got the acceptance by the provincial government at the time, actually put a tax freeze on the property. It is something that we can't give up the jewels. I like to work the other way. I like the riverfront property as an example. I negotiated with CNCP to take that waterfront away from them to give that jewel back to the City of Windsor. But instead of a normal kind of a buy where we just pay the money, we paid them a little bit of money. We gave them a dead, tired building that was up in Ottawa, and then we gave them some land that I always fondly call swampland, and I apologize for all the wonderful residents out there. But you know what happened? We got what we wanted, which was the waterfront. And more importantly, we got land that Mr. Jenny Coco and family and Mr. Finelli and group, they built over 800 houses on that property, generating over $6 million a year in tax revenue to us. So that's not really a private-public partnership, but that's darn close, where we can use our expertise and our initiative to get development going. That's what we want to do.
Mr. Dilkins.
Well, thanks for the question. There are some facilities that a city operates that you just can't sell off, and people would the private sector is not going to take. And I think of the arena, I think of the aquatic center. There's no pool in the world that makes money. So the city has to operate those services and run those services because that's the role of a municipality. But when it comes to other buildings and what we've done and the approach that I would take, I think of the armories, I think of the Cleary. So the Cleary, we made an arrangement with St. Clair College. It was good for jobs, good for economic development. We transferred that city asset to the college, and they're putting it to better use than we would have as a city. In terms of the university and the armories, we transferred the bus station, we transferred the armories to the university, and they're bringing 1,000 students down, 2 faculties, good for the downtown, good for economic development. And those are kind of, key examples where I think it makes sense for the city to look at what they can do and look at their assets in terms of how they can really turn their assets over to other institutions that are going to put them to more effective use and really have a stronger impact in the city than having it run as a city asset.
Mr. Horwitz.
I think a better question would be, we have assets. We have tremendous assets. We have tunnel commission, we have the tunnel. We have utilities, we have water and hydro. We have the airport. We have a lot of facilities that the city owns. I don't think we're getting the best value for them. I would love to bring in the Office of the Auditor General, which I talked about months ago, and my colleagues have taken on in their campaigns also, or at least one of them. And we talked about shining a light on Enwyn and doing a value for money audit of Enwyn and seeing what efficiencies or inefficiencies there are and cutting the costs, hopefully, and lowering our utility charges. So I think if we took a better look at some of the assets the city holds, I think we could find value for our money, and I think we could do a great job in terms of making the city better and creating job opportunities for our young people and for everybody else.
Mr. Milson, 30 seconds.
I just lost $22 million out of my pocket for a nice facility out at the airport with no input from anybody here, right? And Mr. Dilkins, if you had gone to St. Clair College when you were initiating that project, we might have had the jobs ready so that students could be hired to do the job that you promised. 300 jobs, now we find out that we're not going to get that. There's only 100 jobs and there's a shortage. No communications. We have to work together. We all have to work together as a community.
This question starts with Mr. Dilkins. How would you help the less fortunate?
Well, thanks, Craig, for the question. Before I get to that one, let me just go back to the St. Clair College question because it's important to clarify the record. The City of Windsor and myself have been very involved with St. Clair College in terms of the Cleary deal, which everyone's aware of, in terms of the Mediaplex downtown and transferring that land to St. Clair College. I think everyone's also aware, if you have an aging parent, you're aware of Schlegel Villages. And we worked a big deal with the college and transferred a woodlot of ours to the college, and we've been strong partners in order to make these things happen for our community. In terms of the poor and what I would do for the less fortunate, clearly it's about jobs. It's getting them a job so they can, and I would rather work the proven plan that we have, develop the skills gap and the training that addresses the skill gap that exists in the community. And I'm certainly not going to knock Premier Aviation. They're hiring 100 people. We've helped diversify the economy, and they want to put 200 more people to work. And you know what? I think that's good. And these kind of things are good for the community if we can take those people out of poverty, get them trained, get them into a job, and help make them more productive members of society. And that's what I would commit to do as mayor.
Mr. Horwitz?
Well, I think if we start prioritizing our needs in this city. I think if we start worrying about neighborhoods and start focusing on that, if we start keeping the parks, there's about 32 parks that are slated for possible closure in this city. If we keep them open, we're going to give kids somewhere to go and play. If we keep the pools open in the neighborhoods instead of doing these mass projects, we're going to give people a neighborhood to be proud of and to be part of. If we look at our transportation in the city, I've gone to hundreds and thousands of doors, and seniors have said they can't get groceries on the weekend because the bus system has to be re-looked at. Many people said they can't get to St. Clair College or the university, young people and older people, because there isn't a good transportation system for them. If we create jobs in the community, good paying jobs, all these things together can really help with bringing the community together and making us a better community.
Thank you. Mr. Milson?
It's neighborhoods. In this whole time, neighborhoods, in my opinion, have really suffered. Terribly. Like when I was at the United Way event last week and we were told that there's 4,000 kids in Windsor that are never going to get out of poverty. There's just something wrong about that. There's something terribly wrong about that. And then when I go down to Glengarry, council wanted to ram through in the final minute before they became a lame duck council, a high school. Now, you gotta take a look at that property. There's a Caesars that got rammed into the front end. Now you're going to squeeze them in even more with a high school. What kind of neighborhood? They were never even approached. They were never even asked. That's just wrong.
Mr. Dilkins, 30 seconds.
Well, again, the question was about poverty and what we're going to do to help. And I think I go back to jobs. That's the key message I think you're hearing from all of us. It's just who has the proven plan to do it. And, when it comes to our proven plan, we've shown how we've held the line on taxes. We've shown how we've helped diversify the economy. We've proved it. It's not fluff. It's not word of mouth. It's not saying, this might happen. We've actually done it. We've written the checks and we've made the hard decisions, and we've gotten involved to create jobs for this community. As mayor, I will not relent. I will continue to pursue jobs. I will continue what I can do as the leader of the city to make sure that everyone finds gainful employment.
Thank you. This question starts with Mr. Horwitz. Chrysler and Ford are major employers in our community. What would you do for the auto sector?
Well, I would use my skills, first of all, as somebody who gets along with people and is likable. I have a relationship with members of parliament in Ottawa, members of provincial parliament, MPPs. I have relationships with people in the auto sector. Number one priority is we have to keep the jobs in Windsor. We have to fight and do whatever it takes. I'll go to Toronto. I'll go to Ottawa. I'll go to Washington. I'll go wherever it takes to keep the jobs, the automotive jobs in Windsor, to keep the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 jobs in Windsor. My job plan is tremendous. I've been working on it for a long time. It's about the community improvement programs that will help keep jobs in Windsor. So you have to try and get the federal and the provincial government to come on side and keep the jobs in Windsor, but you also municipal, you have to tell them that we have plans and platforms for you to make it easier, quicker, faster, and less expensive to create jobs in Windsor. I will do what it takes again. I will go anywhere to keep the jobs in Windsor and make everybody feel comfortable. I'll work with the unions, I'll work with business head leaders, and I'll make them very comfortable staying in Windsor.
Mr. Milton.
Premier Wynne, Ford's, Unifor, and the government of Oakville just announced 1,000 jobs at Ford's. You know what Premier Wynne said on the weekend was that the only reason they got it was through collaboration, working together. Just like I said earlier, the United Way approach, working together, all pulling together in the same direction. That's what I will do as mayor. That's what we have to do. I've done it before. I continue to do it through my private life, and I will certainly be proud to do it, working shoulder to shoulder as a team to make sure that we get those jobs here to Windsor.
Mr. Dilkins.
Well, I had an opportunity to go to Oakville to Ford headquarters just a couple of months ago for the Automotive Mayors Summit. And what I learned at that time is that Ford, as an example, is having a difficult time. They're not having a difficult time with customers. They're having a difficult time getting their cars to market because of rail issues. So part of my platform and part of the announcement that I made yesterday is that I will work very collaboratively with the provincial and federal government to make sure that we get a double-stack rail tunnel here to improve the ability of these people, these companies, to get their goods to market, and so that they can create jobs and they can put people to work. And make no mistake, the announcement that was just spoken about is part of a larger plan, and all of us at City Council and the Mayor's Office are very well aware of what's going on with a proposed potential Ford investment here in our community, and we are willing to move mountains to see that happen. And if I'm elected as mayor, that won't stop. I will continue to move mountains to see that investment because we recognize the importance of this industry. We recognize there's a 9-to-1 spinoff of jobs created by automotive manufacturing, and I think Chrysler is very well aware that we'll do whatever it takes to help them as well.
Thank you so much. Mr. Horwitz, 30 seconds.
That's why we need somebody new in this job. We've had Mr. Milson had a turn, Drew had a turn for the last 8 years. We need somebody that actually can show something. They can work with business, they can work with labor, a fresh approach, a collaborative approach, someone new, someone that comes out there and doesn't have the 3-year unemployment of 50% with Mr. Milson that was in office, or the almost 10%, over 9% unemployment rate. We need somebody that's able to go and talk to labor and talk to business and put things together and make the changes that are necessary to increase employment in our community.
Thank you. This question starts with Mr. Milson. Youth flight is an issue for Windsor. What would you do to keep young people here?
Work with St. Clair College, the University of Windsor. I mean, you take a look at what the talent that we have coming out of those schools. As we indicated, we've got two huge opportunities here. We have the hospital, the brand new hospital, which in my idea is not going to be just a hospital. It's going to be the leading medical training, research and development center in all of North America. We have an opportunity here to expand past just the hospital and the educational system. We have an opportunity here to start brand new industry, laboratories, blood, cancer research, everything. We have that opportunity right here. We have the infrastructure in place. We also take a look at the new border crossing. We have $1 billion a day right now that's going through our community. I would like Windsor to be what Memphis is to FedEx. I want it to be the intermodal hub of North America. More traffic comes through this border crossing than anywhere else in the world, and we have the opportunity to grab some of that. Just coolers and freezers. We just this last week, where we have 2,300 acres under the glass, the largest concentration of greenhouses in North America. And they're adding another 2,000. We have to get their product to market by doing that, building coolers, assembling land development right now, just like I did with Twin Oaks, which was the last industrial park that we built. Getting prepared, keeping those people here, getting them trained in logistics.
Mr. Dilkens.
Well, the question's a bit of a personal question to me because I have a cutie patootie right there, a 13-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, Madison and Jack, sitting there, and I think about them. And I know how much I've enjoyed my quality of life in the city of Windsor, but I think about them when they go to the University of Windsor and they get training, or they go to St. Clair College and they get educated. I want them to stay here. I want to be close to my family. So this issue is personal to me, and it's something I take to heart. But we have a couple of things that we can do. Clearly, it's about jobs, providing a diversification of jobs in this community that didn't exist 8 years ago, but that we've started to do, and that as mayor I would continue on that same track to help diversify the economy. Again, I point to CS Wind, I point to Premier Aviation. I point to, we heard about making Windsor what FedEx to Memphis is to Memphis here in Windsor. We started that. We've started that with the multimodal hub, and guess what? FedEx is our key tenant. So we've been involved in that, and I think we can link the accelerator, we can link the development commission, we can link the incubator at the University of Windsor. There's a number of things that we can do to help accelerate.
Thank you. Mr. Horwitz?
Well, I think jobs, we talked about jobs and jobs and jobs, and I went door to door speaking to thousands of people, and they're afraid. They're afraid because tomorrow their children are going to leave, and they might have to follow them. And we educate kids. I was at an entrepreneurial meeting yesterday. We educate them, and then they say to me, we're going to leave. I have 2 kids that left, 3 that may leave, and I want to keep them here. So first of all, we need to create jobs, and I have a platform that'll help create a tremendous amount of high-paying jobs in the city. Second, we need to fix the neighborhoods. We need to fix the roads and sewers. We need to keep the parks, because the neighborhoods, you know, they attract young people to Windsor. They make it a place where they want to be part of. We also need to work on arts and culture in the city, and that's part of my platform also, because young people want a city they can love and believe in, and it's green and has arts, parks, and culture. And those are the things we need to focus on.
Mr. Milson, 30 seconds.
Yesterday I was at in Detroit at the Canada-United States Business Association. Found out that the average of a tool and die maker in Windsor and Essex County and Detroit is 56. Those positions are ripe right now for people from St. Clair College, young students that know how to work the machines. $78,000 a year is the average salary for that. That's what we have to do, is just keep bringing ideas to the college and to the university, working with them to make sure that when they graduate, they'll have a job.
Thank you. This next question starts with Mr. Dilkens. What big ideas for special projects do you have?
Well, listen, I need to say that when I look at the budget, we've done a number of projects, and so I think people expect that we're going to continue to build $77.6 million aquatic centers and water parks for the community. We're going to continue to build arenas. We are building a pool, another pool on the east side, which is a $6 million project and a product of an event that we brought here, the FINA event. I think when I look at the budget, though, for the next 4 years, with the exception of a new city hall, with the exception of some improvements on the waterfront, which, you know, one would argue that That's very expensive, but it's certainly not in the $77 million range. I don't see that we have a lot of capacity in our budget over the next 4 years to produce major projects over and above the ones that are already committed to. So I commit to you as mayor that I will follow through on the projects, and it would make sense because I was part of the team that approved them to begin with. But I will follow through on those projects and make sure that they're being managed appropriately, make sure that they're being managed in accordance with acceptable standards, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the projects that we produce are on track, on time, and on budget, just like I delivered with the Aquatic Center.
Mr. Horwitz.
My big plans for this city is to prioritize our budget. Fix what needs fixing. Fix the sewers in the city. That's what we want. That's what all the people I talk to want. Fix the roads that you don't have to destroy your car on a daily basis. Keep the parks in the neighborhoods open. Keep the pools open. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on transparency. People want to believe in their city again. They want to believe in their government. And they want to take care of neighborhoods. And those are the things that we need to focus on. We need to prioritize our budget, and we need to focus on the people of Windsor.
Mr. Milton.
You know what I want? My big thing? I want to see my kids come home. I want them to know that they got a job back here in Windsor. You know, when one is this big, and you see her on a Skype screen at midnight because she's on the other side of the world, it's just not right. And so my big bells and whistles aren't going to happen. My roads, my sewers, my jobs, that's my big plan for the city of Windsor.
Mr. Dilkens, 30 seconds.
Sometimes I'm a little too literal, so when I say big projects that you see, you're not going to see the sewer work that we're going to do because that's going to be underground. But I've committed to a $268 million roads and sewers investment fund, and that fund is designed specifically to help accelerate the repair, to help accelerate the rehabilitation of the sewer system. As a councillor in Ward 1, I've heard loud and clear from residents. I've heard loud and clear that they don't want their basements to flood, and having experienced it myself, I get it. So you're not going to see the sewers, but they're critical infrastructure for a city, and we will follow through and spend that money to make sure we make appropriate replacements and rehabilitation.
This question starts with Mr. Horwitz. What would your relationship be like with the labor community?
Well, one of my assets is that I'm likable. Like Larry. I start at a huge advantage because of that. I'm very personable. I can talk one-on-one with anybody. I'm friends with President of Staples. I've had a relationship in a way with heads of states of different countries. I have that world experience, and I understand things like that. I will work with people throughout the city, throughout the country, across North America, and whatever it takes to work with people and get people interested and start them loving Windsor again. When I came back to Windsor 20 years ago, I was disappointed because I love Windsor. And it's got so many opportunities, and it's geographically situated in such a way that people can really fall in love with it, and business should be thriving here, and industry should be booming in this location. But it's not. It's disappointing. But I believe that if we follow some of my platform, I believe that if we work with business, if we work with labor, if we work together, and I will work with everybody, nobody will be left out of my equation. I will work hard for Windsor, and it will be fair with everybody, and it will make this city great. Thank you.
Mr. Milton.
I was very humbled and very proud that the Windsor District Labor Council endorsed me for the mayoral race. Because everyone just wants to have an opportunity to walk into City Hall, to be heard, just to have their voice heard. So when it was Windsor District Labor Council, members of the business community, neighborhoods, friends, political parties, they've all come on board because they just know my track record, they know that I'm fair, they know that I talk. Do you know that less than 1% of contracts result in a strike? Not too many people know that. I am proud to be a part of this community, which includes everybody.
Mr. Dilkens.
Well, thank you for the question. I have a grassroots campaign. My campaign is made up of retired people, labor people, business people. It's truly grassroots. And as a lawyer, as a labor and employment lawyer, I know firsthand how important relationships are with unions. And I know that if I don't have a solid relationship and we can't have a good dialogue back and forth, that we get nothing accomplished. I realize that acrimony doesn't get us anywhere. And so my approach has always been open. It's been open and honest and frank, and let's have a frank discussion, because quite frankly, as a community, whether we're labor, whether we're business, whether I'm the mayor, we have a shared vision. And that shared vision is to make this community great, to bring this community forward, to transform this community. But make no mistake, and I've proven this to you over the last 8 years, make no mistake, my interest is the taxpayer's interest, and I will never apologize for that. And when hard decisions need to be made, I will not be beholden to special interest. I will make hard decisions that are in your best interest. My friend, on the other hand, has a track record. And if you go back and you look at the Windsor Star, you'll see why Labor's endorsing him, why that support is coming out for him. You'll understand. Just go back and look. It's available online.
Thank
it's
you
fully
very much.
understandable.
Mr. Horwitz, 30 seconds.
I get along with everybody. I mean,
Like Larry.
you know, that's really what you need in this community. It's time for a change. 20 years ago, Mr. Milson. The last 8 years, Mr. Dilkins. It's time for a change. It's time to let in the fresh air. It's time to have a guy that will work with labor really hard. Somebody to work with business, all businesses, not just selective businesses. Somebody that will care about everybody in the community, whether you're poor, whether you're middle class, whether you're upper middle class. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last question is a bit different, and it starts with Mr. Milson. Name a historical figure or two you admire and tell us why.
Let's see, Ronald Reagan, because I don't hold his lack of experience or his age. What is it? I don't hold his age against him or his lack of experience. So, Ronald Reagan, bring down the wall. Bring down the walls of communications at City Hall. Open it up again, please. We just got to bring it down. The opportunities that are available for us through collaboration and working together, that's what's important in Windsor.
Mr. Dilkin.
I'm going to keep it a little more local. There's obviously a lot you can talk about in historical figures, but I'm going to say David A. Kroll, who used to be the mayor of the city, then became a member of provincial parliament, and then ultimately a senator. And David Kroll served as the mayor of the city in some of the most difficult times as mayor back in the 1930s, and the Great Depression and other calamities that affected this city. And he went out to the people. He took care of all of the people. He didn't leave anyone behind. And that's the philosophy that I would have as mayor. Leave no one behind. This is a community. We have a shared vision, and we all succeed when everyone succeeds. So David Kroll is the person that I think that, if I'm looking historically in Windsor, that's the person that I admire.
Mr. Horwitz?
You know, being similar as with my platforms, my colleagues have taken a lot of it because they enjoyed it, and thank you very much. Now Mr. Dilkins took the figure Gordon Henderson mentioned and that I would pick because I most like him. Senator Kroll, Mayor Kroll, was a great leader in our community, and he brought people together in difficult times. He brought the unions together. He brought the business people together. He made Windsor a great city. And sorry that the similarities exist, but I've talked about Mayor Kroll. I've known his family through the years. I spent a lot of time with his family, and that's a man, and that's a senator, and that's a mayor that I most admire.
Mr. Milson, 30 seconds.
It's almost like I planned this. Jane Boyd, who is my chief of staff in the mayor's office, and I were very proud to name the park in honor of Senator Kroll, and you'll see the sign down there right now. And every time I go down there, I walk through his park and remember the wonderful social programs that he started in Canada, and very, very proud to have been a part of naming that park in his honor.
Thank you so much for your responses to the questions. Now you may conclude with your closing remarks. You'll each have a minute and a half, starting with Mr. Dilkin.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. For the past 8 years, I have worked hard to help turn our city around, to reposition our community post-recession as a modern, progressive community that offers the amenities that meets the needs of our residents, so that families choose to stay here, so that businesses choose to locate here, so that retirees choose to retire here. And over the last 8 years, I've certainly had the distinct privilege to serve with Mayor Francis and my colleagues on Windsor City Council, and I'm honored to have had a hand in playing my part in helping make this community better and helping with the transformation of our community. Today, because of our leadership, I'm very happy. Our community is stronger. Because of our resolve, the city, it's repositioned, and we're better. We're better than when we found her. Our taxes, once the highest in the province, today they're below provincial average, and that includes the sewer surcharge. Our debt, once projected to be a crippling $370 million, is now on its way to $65 million. Our reserves, once non-existent, now approaching $140 million. And we have invested record amounts in infrastructure and started to correct the deficit that we inherited, the neglect that we inherited. As mayor, I would like to build on this success. As your mayor, I will continue to invest in our community and transforming our libraries, in transforming our pools and our parks, and adding bike lanes, and yes, building new fire halls that add and protect the safety of the lives of 50,000 additional residents. As mayor, I want to continue with progress.
Mr. Horwitz?
My fellow Windsorites, your choice is clear. Of all the leading candidates, I'm the only one that represents real change. Real change. This is not a matter of opinion, but the reality that confronts you as you consider your vote. I present to you today a new vision with passion and optimism to realize the promise of the great city of ours. There are many past accomplishments Windsor can be proud of, and now is the time for fresh ideas, a very collaborative approach. Others have said it's easy to make promises, but governing is difficult. Herein lies the heart of the problem with their approach. The primary goal of City Hall is not to govern, it is to serve the taxpayers and the residents of Windsor and to be held accountable by them. I propose real change. Now is the time to make investments and establish the environment for job creation and quality jobs. Now is the time to invest in sewers and roads. Now is the time for transparency and accountability by reestablishing the Auditor General. And now is the time to shine the light on N1. And now is the time to hold the line on taxes. Join me today and spread the word. Horwitz is getting Windsor working. With your support, together we can achieve this vision. Thank you so much, everybody.
Mr. Milson.
Thank you. I tell you, I've had a ball. This has been just a great amount of fun to me to meet people. I've lost 44 pounds, which makes me feel pretty good too. But I think the choice is pretty clear here today. Choice between a closed, inaccessible City Hall, a choice between the status quo with double-digit unemployment, crumbling infrastructure, and neighborhoods who have been shut out. I have talked to people across Windsor whose complaints and needs have been ignored. They deserve to know where and how their tax dollars are spent. That is why one of the first things I will do is hire an independent Auditor General. Mr. Dilkens voted to fire the first one. I'll be very proud to hire the next one. People have approached me about their N1 bills asking where the sewer surcharge is, and they can't find it.